Alright, everybody. Alright, so with this is going to be more of a review. The other one was more of a demo. Whatever one I post in whatever order with whatever number, we'll find out. So, I'm going to unplug this. And I don't really need to hear myself because I can hear myself when I talk. Naturally. Alright. So, the Grote, again, Tele style, it is definitely more of a streamlined. I think it's a pretty sharp kind of version of a Tele. I like the roundedness of it. Some people hate it. It's okay. There's tons of guitars in the world. I think Nut has 2 string trees, basic, normal, nothing special tuners. Then you have 22 stainless steel rounded edge frets with all sorts of delightfulness that we'll go through. Blacked out. Normal controls, has the actual like vintage style top hat knob or switch, which I personally realized how much I hate after this one because it's like pointy and obtrusive and things, but it could be the fact that this is likely smaller than a traditional Tele. The back, as you can see, it's string through, it's staggered. So keep that in mind because not every Tele bridge will work with this. And this is a standard, I would say cheapy version of a modern Tele where it has the 2 screws up front. You could probably easily put some decent saddles on this. The saddles on this are super basic, super cheap. Pickups, super microphonic. That's what I was going to show. I won't be able to hear exactly how loud. I'm going to turn off funky effects. Because what the heck would that help with? Alright, so this is the neck. Not terrible. Middle is the middle. Bridge. You could sing to that puppy. So, really microphonic. It's a cheap guitar. I paid very little for this. But there are things I can't fix about it because they did some dumb things. Some of it I will try to photograph. But, in essence, the neck has a nice roasted maple, has a very light finish on it, nice feel. It's chunky, very wide. It's a 42 millimeter, so 1 and 6/8, 5/8. I'm creating my own measurements, 1 to 3/4. That would be wider. Nut width, exactly 42.2 millimeter with the caliper. And there are some real doozies with the short end of frets when it comes to the treble side. On top of it, I was willing to do some fret work on this guitar, but there are actual nubs missing underneath, especially this fret and that fret, where it's, no matter what I do, it could sprout, it could lift. So I can level it and it could work, but for how long, who knows. And there's probably more than that, but there are so many dead frets on this, it's stupid. Here. Once you get above, I believe it would be the 9th fret. There are more dead frets than living ones, for whatever that matters. We'll go on the neck so it's not so nasty. So you're good here. Then it actually gets worse. But we're not going to go through all of it. The problem being is that a fret job can do a temporary work with it, But without the tang being in the actual fretboard, there's nothing holding it there. And as wood ages and as the weather affects it, it could become a long-term problem. And they already kind of have these frets on the lower side, so they sanded the crap out of them when they leveled them, but they didn't do a very good job of anything with the frets, except the fact that they were likely machine pre-rounded, but there's tooling marks all over them, especially the higher you go. Kind of like what you expect out of cheaper guitars is the higher you go into the actual fretboard, the less love that is put into it, looks, feel, polishing, etc. And these are very rough, even though they don't look rough. One of those fun things you can run into is stainless steel. Very generic pickups. I imagine it's, well, there is a base plate on it. I could see that just roughly through there. It's probably ceramic. It's ceramic. And with that, it's not bad outside of microphonics. It's usable. The problem is this. A guitar like this is either for someone that's going to mod it, has an idea how to do it, is willing to pay to have it done and have a really great instrument, or it's a beginner. Do not buy this if you're a beginner. The reviews are negative, and there's going to be a lot of QC issues that's going to vary a lot from one to another. But do not buy this if you're a beginner, unless you know people and are in a musical family, or know that you have to get stuff worked on but you don't know anything about it, because you're going to run into issues. There are better instruments, and in some ways you could make the argument that a Squier Affinity or a Squier Standard Tele or a Squier Affinity Strat or whatever, even though it's not going to hold a ton of value, it has some value, unlike this, which has no value in a resale market. Literally none. MUSI holds some value. This, literally none. And when I say hold some value, it's like, not a lot. But regardless, it works. It has all sorts of issues. They also, I'm going to try to capture that. There's literal cutout portion of the fretboard where it's like all janky and screwed up. It's made in China. It says designed in the US. I don't know who designs these. I always thought this was a Chinese-based brand, because I used to see these Grote on reverb, not reverb, well, sometimes more like eBay, from sellers that are located in China all the time. And then progressively as time went on, you started seeing them on reverb, and then you saw on Amazon. And Amazon seems to be the best home for them. They have some really cool, for the price, instruments that don't have the level of negativity that this model has, which is a shame. Because this was originally, I think, like almost $200, and then it was $169 forever, $159 regular. I got this on sale for $129, which is extremely cheap for stainless steel neck. But it doesn't matter how cheap an instrument is if there are literal issues with material missing that doesn't give you any sure mind that the guitar has any longevity. Now, this is a lot of talking. I ain't going to take this guitar apart. I tried to set up the guitar, and it would obviously need to be shimmed. I have the saddles way lower than anyone should ever adjust, just to see. And I'd say if you want sky-high action, you're not going to get as much dead frets as you would expect because of the angles and geometry of it all. But I have this adjusted, and it's still pretty high. It's pretty high action down. But for a cheap guitar, that's fixable. The things that aren't fixable is the fret tings and the wood that is missing on the fretboard. So with that, I would say, if you know what you're doing, take a chance. You might find an instrument that isn't as jacked up. You'll probably still have to do fret work. You'll probably still have to shim The actual neck pocket, who knows what it looks like underneath there. It could have been literally cut concave, but not concave, but in a downward towards the bridge angle. It's hard to say. Is there any issues with the nut? I don't believe so. I didn't intonate it. It's not really that terribly far off, so it's manageable. So with that said, Grote, if you watch this, this is a good concept. Executed too poorly. Most of us would rather pay like $200 for something that doesn't have a ton of unfixable or at least big question mark issues. All brands that are doing these rounded, probably pre-finished, prefab frets, it is always best to stagger more narrow to wider, and if worst case scenario, side more towards the treble side with the frets. Equally, the neck is not angled correctly. It could probably be easily adjusted. It's a miracle it's not affecting the intonation with it being kind of oddly set up. But regardless, if you're watching this and you make these instruments or manufacture them, you can get a little more money with just a little bit of pre-thought. And I imagine it's not impossible to build it in there. That way you don't have returns, because returns isn't helping anyone. It's not helping you, it's not helping Amazon, it's not helping the people that, such as me, that buy the guitar. At $129, the only reason I jumped on this was because I wanted to hopefully prove the reviews wrong. Now, am I able to prove all those reviews wrong? No. Am I keeping this guitar? Sadly, no, because I think it's a really sharp and interesting take on a Tele. You fix those issues, make a pro model, however you have to word it, or whatever the actual model name, make it like a later model. You have a lot of good here. You don't have to spend exponential more amount of time on it. And then prospective buyers of this guitar, there is potential in it. This specific one has a couple key issues that can't really reasonably work through. If you want, I will try to capture the fretboard thing, because I'm going to put it in a review on this instrument. That way there's at least something that shows, hey, this is a real issue. Let's not let stuff like this get out of the factory. It's just not necessary. So, lots of rambling, lots of talking. There was a demo where I barely talked at all, played. It wasn't the easiest thing to play, but there are sounds from practically clean to a little gritty to a little more drive to lead tones to kind of experimental sounds in there, and maybe you'll get an idea of what it sounds like. Likely the pickups are going to be pretty consistent. Super dark neck pickup with no clarity at all on the wound strings. Bridge pickup is okay. Microphonic, they're normal budget Tele pickups. That's all. Don't want to keep talking. Have a good one.